Family is supposed to be a place of safety, a place where you are accepted, understood, and loved. But what happens when the people who share your blood become the people who hurt you the most? What happens when the very individuals who should support your growth become obstacles to your peace? Many people spend their entire lives tolerating disrespect, manipulation, criticism, and emotional abuse simply because it comes from family. They endure behaviors they would never accept from strangers. They stay silent when their dignity is attacked. They sacrifice their mental health to maintain relationships that slowly destroy their spirit. Why? Because society teaches us a dangerous belief. Family is everything. But Stoicism teaches something deeper. It teaches that virtue is everything, character is everything, inner peace is everything, and anyone, regardless of blood relation, who repeatedly threatens those things should never be given unlimited access to your life. The Stoics understood a truth that many people still struggle to accept. Not every family member deserves proximity. Not every relative deserves influence. Not every blood connection deserves loyalty. As the great Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, Marcus Aurelius once reminded himself, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." This means your responsibility is not to control toxic people. Your responsibility is to control what access they have to your mind. Today, we will explore 10 toxic behaviors that no Stoic should ever tolerate, not from strangers, not from friends, and certainly not from family. Because protecting your peace is not selfish, protecting your peace is wisdom. Toxic behavior. Number 1. Constant disrespect, disguised as honesty. One of the most common forms of family toxicity is disrespect hidden behind the mask of honesty. Perhaps you've heard phrases like, "I'm just telling the truth," "I'm only being honest," "You can't handle criticism." But let's be clear, honesty without kindness is cruelty. Truth without wisdom becomes a weapon. Many toxic relatives use honesty as permission to insult, belittle, and humiliate others. They criticize your appearance, your career, your choices, your dreams, your relationships. And whenever you react, they accuse you of being sensitive. This is psychological manipulation, because genuine honesty seeks growth. Toxic honesty seeks dominance. The Stoics understood that words reveal character. When someone repeatedly speaks to you with contempt, they reveal who they truly are. And here's where many people become trapped. They keep hoping the disrespect will stop. They believe that if they become more successful, more attractive, more accomplished, they will finally earn respect. But respect that must be earned repeatedly was never respect to begin with. A healthy person can disagree with you while still respecting you. A toxic person needs to diminish you to feel superior. The Stoic response is neither anger nor revenge. It is distance. Distance is often the most powerful answer to disrespect. Because every moment you tolerate mistreatment, you teach others how to treat you. Your silence becomes permission. Your acceptance becomes a standard. And eventually, what once offended you becomes normal. A Stoic refuses this. A Stoic understands that self-respect begins where tolerance for disrespect ends. You do not need to argue. You do not need to convince. You do not need to defend yourself endlessly. You simply remove yourself from environments where your dignity is not valued. Because peace grows where respect exists, and respect cannot grow where contempt is constantly watered. Toxic behavior. 2. Emotional manipulation. Through guilt, few weapons are stronger than guilt, and unfortunately, family members often know exactly how to use it. They know your weaknesses. They know your fears. They know your emotional buttons, and they press them repeatedly. They make you feel responsible for their happiness, responsible for their sadness, responsible for their failures, responsible for their emotional state. They say things like, "After everything I've done for you, you owe me. If you loved me, you would. You're breaking my heart." Notice what happens. Love becomes a transaction, affection becomes a debt, and your freedom becomes hostage to their emotions. This is not love. This is control. The Stoics believed every person is responsible for their own inner world. No one can carry another person's emotional burdens forever. Imagine carrying a backpack. At first, it feels light. Then someone places a stone inside. Then another. Then another. Years pass. Eventually, the backpack becomes so heavy that you forget what it feels like to walk freely. This is what emotional guilt does. It slowly conditions you to live for other people's approval, to ignore your own needs, to betray your own values, to abandon your own path. And the tragedy is that many people don't even realize it's happening. They mistake guilt for love. They mistake obligation for loyalty. They mistake emotional slavery for family devotion. The Stoic understands something powerful. Compassion does not require self-destruction. You can care deeply about someone while refusing manipulation. You can love someone while saying no. You can respect someone without surrendering your freedom. A mature person respects boundaries. A manipulative person punishes boundaries. Pay attention to how people react when you say no. That reaction reveals everything, because healthy love gives freedom. Toxic love demands obedience, and the Stoic always chooses freedom. Toxic behavior. Number 3. Constant criticism of your growth. There is a strange phenomenon in life. The moment you begin improving yourself, some people become uncomfortable. Not because you've done anything wrong, but because your growth reminds them of their stagnation. This happens frequently within families. You begin exercising, someone mocks you. You start a business, someone laughs, you develop discipline. Someone calls you arrogant. You pursue your dreams. Someone predicts your failure. Why? Because growth changes dynamics, and toxic people fear change. When you evolve, they lose the version of you they could control. They lose the version of you who always said yes, the version who accepted disrespect, the version who remained small. And so they attack your progress, not directly, but through subtle comments, small insults, sarcasm, doubt, discouragement. Their words sound insignificant individually, but over time they become psychological chains. Many dreams die this way. Not because they were impossible, but because someone listened too closely to the wrong voices. The Stoics warned against this. Epictetus taught that if you seek approval from everyone, you become a slave to everyone. Think about that. A slave, not physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Every decision becomes filtered through other people's opinions. Every ambition becomes dependent on validation. Every dream becomes vulnerable to criticism. The Stoic path requires courage. The courage to disappoint people. The courage to be misunderstood. The courage to walk alone when necessary. Because not everyone who loves you will understand your transformation. And not everyone who understands your transformation will support it. That is simply reality. The eagle cannot learn to fly by listening to chickens. And neither can you build an extraordinary life by listening to people committed to mediocrity. Your growth is not something that requires permission. Your purpose does not need approval. Your future does not belong to your critics. It belongs to your actions. And every step toward becoming your best self is worth taking, even if those closest to you fail to understand it.
There comes a moment in every person's life when they must make a difficult decision. Decision between peace and approval, between truth and comfort, between personal growth and emotional captivity. Most people spend years believing that family relationships should be preserved at all costs. But Stoicism never taught blind loyalty. Stoicism taught wisdom. And wisdom requires seeing people clearly, not as we wish them to be, but as they truly are. One of the greatest mistakes people make is confusing blood connection with moral character. Just because someone is family does not mean every behavior they display deserves acceptance. The Stoics believed that virtue, not DNA, is what determines the quality of a person. And if someone repeatedly brings chaos into your life, Your responsibility is not to endure endlessly. Your responsibility is to protect your peace. Let's continue with 3 more. Toxic behaviors that no Stoic should tolerate. Toxic behavior. Number 4. Playing the victim to avoid responsibility. Of the most exhausting people you will ever encounter is the perpetual victim. No matter what happens, nothing is ever their fault. Every failure has someone else to blame. Every conflict has another villain. Every mistake has an excuse. And every consequence becomes evidence that life is unfair. At first, you feel sympathy. You want to help. You want to understand. You want to support them, but eventually you notice something. The story never changes. Different year. Dot. Different. Problem. Different. People. Same. Victim. The Stoics understood that personal responsibility is the foundation of growth. Without responsibility, transformation becomes impossible. Imagine a sailor caught in a storm. A wise sailor asks, "What can I control?" A victim asks, "Who can I blame?" One grows stronger. The other remains stuck. Many toxic family members become masters of victim. When they hurt you, they become the victim. When they lie, they become the victim. When they disrespect boundaries, they become the victim. When confronted with their actions, they suddenly begin talking about their own suffering. The conversation shifts. Accountability disappears. And somehow, you end up apologizing. This is emotional manipulation disguised as vulnerability. The victim mentality creates an invisible prison, because as long as someone believes their problems are caused entirely by others, they never need to change. And if they never change, the cycle continues forever. The Stoic response is powerful. Do not argue. Do not rescue. Do not carry responsibilities that belong to someone else. You can show compassion without accepting excuses. You can offer support without becoming someone's emotional caretaker. You can listen without surrendering your truth. Remember, understanding someone's pain does not require tolerating their behavior. A person's trauma may explain their actions. It does not excuse them. The Stoics believed every human being possesses the ability to choose their response. No matter how difficult life becomes, no matter how painful the past may be, no matter how unfair circumstances seem, responsibility remains the doorway to freedom, and anyone unwilling to walk through that doorway will eventually try to pull others into their prison. Do not follow them. Toxic behavior. Number 5. Jealousy hidden behind concern. Not all jealousy looks like hatred. Sometimes jealousy arrives wearing a smile. Sometimes it arrives disguised as concern. And that makes it far more dangerous, because obvious enemies are easy to recognize. Hidden enemies are not. Have you ever shared exciting news with someone only to feel their energy change instantly? You announce a promotion. Their enthusiasm disappears. You start a business. They become skeptical. You lose weight. They make jokes. You find happiness. They suddenly become critical. The words sound caring, but the energy feels strange. Something feels off. That's because jealousy often hides behind concern. Instead of saying, "I envy your success," they say, "Are you sure that's a good idea?" Instead of saying, "Your growth makes me uncomfortable," they say, "I'm just worried about you." Instead of celebrating your achievements, they focus on risks, on failures, on reasons things might go wrong. The Stoics understood that people reveal themselves through patterns. One negative comment means little. Repeated negativity reveals character. Jealous people struggle when others succeed, because success exposes possibilities they ignored. Your discipline reminds them of their excuses. Your courage reminds them of their fears. Your progress reminds them of their inaction. And rather than confronting those uncomfortable truths, they try to pull you back down. Not always consciously. Sometimes they don't even realize they're doing it, but the effect remains the same. Your confidence begins shrinking. Your excitement fades. Your ambition weakens. This is why Stoics guarded their minds carefully. Seneca warned that we become like the company we keep. Think about that. Every conversation shapes you. Every relationship influences you. Every environment affects your spirit. If you constantly surround yourself with negativity, doubt eventually becomes your language. Fear becomes your mindset. Limitation becomes your identity. The Stoic solution is simple. Stop seeking validation from people threatened by your growth. Not everyone deserves front row seats to your dreams. Not everyone deserves access to your ambitions. Sometimes silence is protection. Sometimes privacy is wisdom. And sometimes the greatest act of self-respect is pursuing your goals without announcing them to those who secretly hope you fail. Remember this: the people who truly love you feel inspired by your success, not threatened by it. Toxic behavior number 6. Repeatedly violating your boundaries. A boundary is not punishment. A boundary is self-respect. Yet toxic people often treat boundaries as personal attacks. Why? Because boundaries remove access. Access to your time, access to your energy, access to your emotions, access to your peace, and those who benefited from your lack of boundaries rarely celebrate their arrival. Imagine living in a house with no doors. Anyone can enter, anytime, without permission, without warning, without respect. Sounds absurd, yet many people live emotionally this way. They allow others unlimited access to their minds, schedules, emotions, and personal lives. The result: exhaustion, resentment, burnout, loss of identity. Toxic family members often ignore boundaries. Repeatedly, you ask for privacy, they invade it. You ask for respect, they dismiss it. You say no, they pressure you. You create distance, they create drama. The issue isn't misunderstanding. The issue is entitlement. Because healthy people hear boundaries and adjust. Toxic people hear boundaries and negotiate or ignore them entirely. This is one of the clearest indicators of emotional immaturity. A person who respects you respects your limits. A person who only respects you when you obey them does not respect you at all. Many people fear setting boundaries because they worry about conflict. But here's the truth: the conflict already exists. The only difference is whether it happens inside you or outside you. Without boundaries, the conflict stays inside. Stress grows. Anger builds. Resentment accumulates. Eventually, you become emotionally exhausted. The Stoics understood that peace requires structure. Just as cities require walls, just as gardens require fences, human beings require boundaries. Not to keep everyone out, but to protect what matters most. Your energy is limited. Your time is limited. Your life is limited. Anyone who repeatedly ignores your boundaries is showing you exactly how much they value your well-being. Believe them, because actions reveal truth more clearly than words ever can. A Stoic does not feel guilty for protecting their peace. A Stoic understands that boundaries are not barriers to love. They are conditions that make healthy love possible. Without boundaries, relationships become controlled. With boundaries, relationships become respect. And respect is the foundation of every meaningful connection. There is a painful truth that many people spend their entire lives avoiding. Not everyone who shares your blood shares your values. Not everyone who calls themselves family contributes to your peace. And not everyone who says they love you knows how to love you in a healthy way. The Stoics never taught hatred. They never taught revenge. They never taught bitterness. But they did teach discernment. They taught that wisdom requires seeing reality clearly. And reality is this: some relationships nourish the soul. Others slowly poison it. The strongest person is not the one who can endure unlimited suffering. The strongest person is the one who recognizes when suffering is unnecessary. As we conclude this journey, let's explore the final 4 toxic behaviors that no Stoic should tolerate, not even from family. Toxic behavior number 7. Gaslighting and making you doubt reality. One of the most dangerous forms of emotional manipulation is gaslighting. Why? Because it attacks the very foundation of your mind. It doesn't simply hurt your feelings. It makes you question your perception, your memory, your judgment, your reality. Imagine standing in broad daylight looking at the sun. You know it is there. You can see it clearly. Yet someone repeatedly tells you the sun isn't there. You're imagining things that never happened. You're remembering it wrong. At first, you resist. But after hearing it enough times, doubt begins to grow. This is how gaslighting works. Not through one lie, but through 1,000 small distortions. Toxic family members often use phrases like, "You're too sensitive. I never said that. You're overreacting. That didn't happen the way you think it did. You're crazy." The goal is not understanding. The goal is confusion. Because confused people are easier to control. When you stop trusting your own perception, you become dependent on theirs. And dependence creates power. The Stoics believed clarity of mind is sacred. Your ability to perceive reality accurately is one of your greatest strengths. Without it, wisdom becomes impossible. This is why gaslighting is so destructive. It separates you from yourself. Eventually you begin apologizing for things you didn't do, questioning things you know are true, doubting instincts that were trying to protect you. The Stoic response is simple but powerful. Trust evidence over manipulation. Trust patterns over promises. Trust actions over explanations. If someone repeatedly causes confusion whenever accountability appears, pay attention. Reality does not require endless defense. Truth remains true whether someone acknowledges it or not. Remember, you are not obligated to participate in conversations designed to distort your reality. Protect your mind, because once your mind becomes clear, manipulation loses its power. Toxic behavior number 8. Conditional love and emotional blackmail. Healthy love says, "I love you, even when we disagree." Toxic love says, "I love you only when you obey me." This is conditional love. and it is one of the most heartbreaking forms of emotional control. Many people grow up believing love must be earned through compliance, earned through sacrifice, earned through self-betrayal, earned through becoming whoever others want them to be. The result? A lifetime of performance, a lifetime of pretending, a lifetime of abandoning authenticity to maintain approval. Toxic family members often use affection as a reward and withdrawal as punishment. When you agree, they become warm. When you comply, they become supportive. When you obey, they become loving. But the moment you express independence, everything changes. Suddenly they become distant, cold, critical, disappointed. This is emotional blackmail. It creates an invisible message. Be who I want, or lose my love. Think about how tragic that is. Imagine a flower being told, I'll only water you if you grow exactly the way I want. Eventually, the flower stops growing naturally. It bends unnaturally towards survival. Many people do the same. They sacrifice their identity to preserve relationships. The Stoics rejected this completely. They believed virtue requires authenticity. You cannot live according to reason while constantly performing for approval. You cannot be free while your self-worth depends on acceptance. The Stoic understands that true love liberates. It does not control. True love encourages growth. It does not demand conformity. And true love remains present even when disagreement exists. Never trade your authenticity for temporary approval, because every time you abandon yourself to keep someone else happy, you teach yourself that your truth matters less than their comfort. And that is a lesson no wise person should learn. Toxic behavior. Number 9. Constant negativity and chaos. Some people carry storms wherever they go. Every conversation becomes a complaint. Every situation becomes a crisis. Every opportunity becomes a problem. Every day becomes a drama. They thrive in chaos, not because chaos makes them happy, but because peace feels unfamiliar. Many toxic family systems operate this way. Conflict becomes normal. Arguments become routine. Stress becomes culture. And eventually, everyone begins believing this is simply how life works. But the Stoics understood something profound. Peace is a choice, not a circumstance. A choice. When you spend enough time around negativity, your nervous system adapts to it. You become hyper-vigilant, anxious, emotionally exhausted. You start expecting disaster. You start preparing for a conflict. You start living in survival mode. This is not living. This is merely enduring. Marcus Aurelius frequently reminded himself not to absorb the negativity of others. Why? Because emotions are contagious. Pessimism spreads. Fear spreads. Anger spreads. Chaos spreads. And if you are not careful, another person's dysfunction becomes your identity. Pay attention to how you feel after spending time with someone. Do you feel energized or drained, inspired or defeated.com, or anxious? Your emotional response contains valuable information. Some people are sunshine, others are storms. And wisdom requires knowing the difference. The Stoic does not hate negative people, but neither does he allow negativity to dominate his inner world. Protect your peace. Protect your attention. Protect your emotional environment, because whatever repeatedly enters your mind eventually shapes your life. and your life is too precious to be surrendered to endless chaos. Toxic behavior. Number 10. Disrespecting the person. You are becoming perhaps the most painful behavior of all, is when people refuse to accept your growth. Not because they don't see it, but because they do. Growth changes relationships. Transformation changes dynamics. Healing changes expectations. And not everyone benefits when you become stronger. Some people prefer the old version of you, the insecure version, the fearful version, the people-pleasing version, the version that tolerated everything, because that version was easier to control. But the moment you begin changing, resistance appears. You become confident. They call you arrogant. You establish boundaries. They call you selfish. You pursue purpose. They call you unrealistic. You protect your peace. They call you distant. Notice the pattern. The labels change, but the goal remains the same. Return to who you used to be. Return to what made them comfortable. Return to the version of yourself that required less from them. But growth is not betrayal. Healing is not selfishness. Self-respect is not arrogance. And boundaries are not cruelty. The Stoics believed life is a process of becoming. Every day is an opportunity to improve your character, to strengthen your mind, to deepen your wisdom, to become more aligned with virtue. Anyone who repeatedly attacks that process is not protecting you. They are protecting their own comfort. Never allow someone else's fear of change to stop your evolution, because one day you will look back on your life, and the greatest regret will not be that others misunderstood you. The greatest regret will be that you misunderstood yourself, that you ignored your potential, that you abandoned your growth, that you became smaller to make others comfortable. Do not commit that mistake. You were not born to remain who you were yesterday. You were born to evolve. Powerful Stoic conclusion. At the end of life, the question will not be, did everyone approve of me? The question will be, did I live according to my values? The Stoics understood a timeless truth. You cannot control how others behave. You cannot force people to respect you. You cannot make toxic individuals become healthy. You cannot heal those who refuse healing. But you can choose what you tolerate. You can choose what influences your mind. You can choose who receives access to your peace. And that choice changes everything. Remember these 10 toxic behaviors: constant disrespect disguised as honesty, emotional manipulation through guilt, criticism of your growth, playing the victim to avoid responsibility, jealousy hidden behind concern, violating your boundaries repeatedly, gaslighting and distorting reality, conditional love and emotional blackmail, constant negativity and chaos, disrespecting the person you are becoming. A Stoic does not respond to these behaviors with hatred. A Stoic responds with clarity, with wisdom, with boundaries, with self-respect, and sometimes with distance. Because peace is not something you find. Peace is something you protect. And the moment you stop tolerating what destroys your soul, you begin creating the life you were always meant to live. So, stand tall. Guard your mind. Honor your worth. And never forget, even when family cannot give you the respect you deserve, you must never stop giving it to yourself. That is the Stoic way.